www.videonews.com.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. We're here for is this working? Yeah. We're here for a very breaking event, as we all know, since 2 days. 2 hostages in Syria, 2 Japanese hostages in Syria, are under the threat of being killed if the Japanese government doesn't fulfill certain conditions set by the hostage takers. We have here today Professor Ko Nakata. He's a visiting professor for Islamic studies at Doshisha University, and he will talk about the current events. He will also try to outline possible solutions of this crisis, and at the very end he will have an appeal to IS regarding the hostages. Professor Nakata is also being investigated by the authorities for aiding a student to go to IS, and that's why we also have his lawyer here, and she will give us a quick introduction on the legal situation. We will actually start with that. For those who don't know me, my name is Patrick Saul. I'm the East Asia correspondent of the Swiss newspaper Neue Zürcher Zeitung. Next to me is Takamatsu-san, our translator. So please, Kazuya Akita, word is yours.
本日はお集まりいただきありがとうございます。中田さんの現在私選予備陰謀罪という刑事事件の被疑者扱いになっておりますので、私がここにおりますが、今回はそのイスラム国の誘拐の件でご質問等をお受けするということでこちらに来ております。中田さんとイスラム国との関わりというのは、もともと中田さんについてこちらがお配りしましたですね、資料の B というところに書いてありますが、あと週刊ポストの記事で湯川さん救出劇を書いておりますので、それをご参照ください。
So thank you very much for coming today. As was explained earlier, Professor Nakata is a suspect in a criminal case at present. The charge that has been brought against him is that he is plotting and preparing for a private war, to participate in a private war. And today's press conference is really about the hostage situation, and therefore he's going to primarily be taking questions and speaking about the IS, the Islamic State, and the hostages. In regard to why he is qualified to speak about these issues, there have been some documents distributed to you labeled Documents B, which give you his background and explaining his expertise in Islamic law. And there's also a copy from the Weekly Post magazine, which tells you about a failed attempt on his part to try to rescue Mr. Yukawa.
資料の B の3ページの4以下で湯川春菜さん救出の経験について書いてあります。これは去年の9月にイスラム国の司令官のウマル・グラバーさん、この方は表舞台に出ている方なんで皆さんも確認できると思いますが、その方から湯川さんの裁判をするのでイスラム法とアラビア語と日本語ができる人を紹介してほしいと、あと裁判の模様を報道するジャーナリストを連れてきてほしいという要請を中田先生が受けました。
So in the set of documents labeled B on page 3, starting from section 4, there is an explanation in detail about the failed attempt to rescue Mr. Yukawa. What happened in brief was that in September of last year, 2014, Professor Nakata was contacted by a very old acquaintance of his, a man named Mr. Umar Grubber. He is a person that is in the Islamic State organization. He is already quite a public figure, and I think you can check his background very, very quickly. Get information quickly. he contacted Professor Nakata because he said that there was this Japanese man, Mr. Yukawa, who was being held, and now that he was going to be put to trial according to Islamic law, they had a problem because Mr. Yukawa could not speak Arabic. He didn't really know very much about Islamic law, and so they wanted to have Professor Nakata's advice as to a person who could interpret from Japanese to Arabic and who had expertise or knowledge about Islamic law. Another request was made by Mr. Garber, which was that the organization wanted the actual the court case to be broadly disseminated, and as a result, he was asked to provide or bring with him a journalist.
その時は、お金を払えとかそういう話は一切なくて、基本的に多分、中田先生が湯川さんをその司法の場の、裁判を通じて救出できると、そういう見込みだというふうにウマルさんから中田先生は言われて、それで、シリアに入国しました。
At that point, and I remind you again, this is September of 2014, Mr. Umar Gruber's description of the situation was that, first of all, there was no request for any kind of ransom money. He told Professor Nakata that if Professor Nakata intervened and took part in this court case, then probably he would end up by being able to take Mr. Yukawa home back with him to Japan. So based on these assurances, Professor Nakata made preparations to go to Syria.
ただ、外務省にその話をしたところ、外務省の方からは自己責任で行くということを、確認されて、それからアメリカの空爆が始まってしまって、人質を預かっている方と連絡が取れなくなり、救出ができなくなったという、そういう経緯があります。
However, before he went, he was contacted by MOFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs officials, who said to him that if you go on your own responsibilities. It is your own decision to do this very dangerous act. He also, while he was in Syria, the air bombings began for the Islamic State. As a result, it was very, very difficult to get into contact with the organization or the people in the organization who were actually holding the hostages.
その後、先ほど言われたように視線予備という形で中田先生がそのイスラム国の学生を、行きたいという学生を助けたということで被疑者になってしまったので、コンタクトを控えていた。そしたらこの事件が起こったと、そういう経緯です。
Mr. Professor Nakata returned back to Japan, and some time after this, he was made a suspect in this criminal case I described earlier. Specifically, this law is applied to him because he is accused of helping a Japanese student who said he wanted to go to Islam and take part in some of the events there. As a result of his being under police scrutiny, Professor Nakata refrained from contacting his acquaintance in Syria, and while he was waiting, this current hostage situation arose. So this is the background.
ですから今日は視線予備のことについてのご質問ではなくて、この人質救出についてのご質問ということでお願いしたいと思います。
So today, we would like to ask that you try to limit your questions to the current hostage situation and not to questions about this personal case in which he is involved, this private war, abetting and plotting.
入ってますか。入ってますか。はい。今日はお集まりいただきましてありがとうございます。私もともとですね、非常に言葉がはっきりしませんで、日本語のテレビでもですね、私がしゃべると字幕が出るというぐらいはっきりしないんですけれども、今難聴が非常に悪くなっておりまして、皆さんの質問もよく聞き取れませんので、今回ですね、できる限り、隣にいらっしゃいます秋田先生の通じてお話を聞いております。
Thank you very much for coming today. I would like to begin with a slight apology. I do not speak clearly to begin with, and sometimes when I'm interviewed on Japanese television, they run subtitles under my words. That is how much I tend to mumble. On top of that, I'm becoming hard of hearing, so if I would ask for your indulgence and try to basically give most of my message through my lawyer, Ms. Akita, as much as possible today.
今秋田先生からご説明がありました通り、私今、被疑者の立場におりますので、できる限り、マスコミの露出も避けておりましたし、イスラム国とのですね、コンタクトも避けておりました。それは私自身にとっても問題ですし、先方に対してもですね、迷惑がかかるというのもありましたのででしたけれども、今回こういうことでしたので、人命がかかっておりますので、一応皆様の前でお話しすることにいたします。
As Ms. Akita explained, at the present I am the suspect in a criminal case, and as a result of this, I have no longer been able to contact my acquaintances in the Islamic State. I think this is quite problematic, and I wonder if there might be even some constitutional questions that might have arisen as a result of my current situation. But in any case, we are talking about human lives, and therefore I would like to very much try to help as much as I can.
今回のですね、タイミング的に安倍総理の中東歴訪に合わせて、今回の発表があったわけですけれども、安倍総理自身は中東に行ったことが、地域の安定につながる、和平につながるというふうに信じていたのだと思いますけれども、残念ながら非常にバランスが悪いというふうに思います。
As you know, this current hostage situation arose immediately in conjunction with, or immediately after Prime Minister Abe began to visit the countries of the Middle East. I believe that Prime Minister Abe probably truly believed that the reason for his visit to the Middle East was that he wanted to contribute to the stability of the region and that he wanted to make peaceful contributions. However, I can only say that the overall balance of his visit was perhaps inadequate.
イスラエルに対して入植地への反対を直言するなどですね、といったことでバランスの取れた外交を行っているというふうに信じているのだと思いますけれども、中東においてですね、イスラエルとそもそも国交を持っている国自体がほとんどないというような事態をやはり正確に実感していないのだと思います。ですので、これは中東、あるいはアラブ・イスラム世界では非常に偏った外交というふうに見られます。
Of course, I believe that he was probably trying to give a balanced presentation when he visited the Middle East. For example, he did express his concerns about the settlements that were being built. However, when you consider the fact that in the Middle East, Israel has almost no diplomatic relations with most of the countries in that region, given that background, the fact that he probably did not really have a fundamental, real, practical understanding of the severity of the situation and of the feelings of the Islamic people and many other countries, most of the countries of the Middle East.
記者会見の中で難民支援、人道支援を行っているということを強調しておりましたけれども、もし人道支援、難民支援ということで今回の中東の歴訪があったのだとすればですね、今、シリアからの難民、正確には分かりませんけれども、300万人とも言われております。その大半、半数以上は160万人とも言われていますけれども、トルコにおります。まず、トルコを最優先すべきであって、トルコが外れているところでですね、難民支援のために行った人道支援をするといっても、これはやはり通用しないというふうに思われます。
In his press conference, Prime Minister Abe talked about the fact that he wanted to be able to make contributions to help the refugees and to offer humanitarian support. If this was actually the case, then when you consider the fact that some 3 million people, there are many estimates, but it is considered that about 3 million people have fled Syria, and about half of them, maybe 1.6 million, have actually fled to neighboring Turkey, then Turkey should probably have been on the list of countries, the first on the list of countries that he visited. The fact that this was not the way the schedule was planned shows that he did not truly quite understand the situation.
訪問国がエジプト、イスラエル、パレスチナ、ヨルダンとですね、すべてイスラエルに関係のする国だけであると、そういう選択をしている時点で、アメリカとイスラエルの手先というふうに当然認識されます。人道支援のために行っている、あるいは難民支援のために行っているとは、理解されないというのは、中東を知る者としては常識です。
The fact that he visited countries such as the Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Egypt, etc. In other words, the countries that had close relationships with Israel out of the Middle Eastern nations, gave the impression to other Middle Eastern nations that Prime Minister Abe was simply acting as a puppet or as a someone that was being controlled by the U.S. and Israel, or that was very close to them. In other words, although he stressed the fact that he wanted to make humanitarian contributions, that he wanted to help the refugees, for people who truly understand the situation of the Middle East, everyone would understand that that was not the kind of message that would be received.
中東の安定に寄与するというのは、当然理解できる発言ですけれども、その中でですね、中東の安定が失われているのは、イスラム国が、出現する前のことです。その中でですね、わざわざといいますか、イスラム国だけを取り上げて、名指しで取り上げて、イスラム国と戦うためと言いながら、人道支援だけやっているといっても、やはりそれは、通用しない論理だというふうに思います。
Of course, I do believe that he truly does wish to try to help increase stability in the Middle East. However, when we consider stability in the Middle East, we realize that even before the appearance of the Islamic State, ISIS or ISIL, their region was full of instability. In other words, this was a situation that preceded the establishment of the Islamic State. In spite of this, however, in his speech, Mr. Abe deliberately pointed out the Islamic State by name and said that basically, the message that he was giving was that he was joining the forces to battle the Islamic State. And so even though he focused on helping the refugees and contributing for humanitarian reasons, that message probably did not come through.
日本人の人質2人がいるということは、外務省も把握していたことであって、その中でわざわざですね、イスラム国と戦うということを発言するというのは非常に不用意であるというふうに言わざるを得ないと思います。
What I'm saying is that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs had known for some time that these two current hostages were being held by the Islamic State. Given the fact that they already knew this information, for Prime Minister Abe in his speech to deliberately name this organization, point this organization out by name, was something that I believe was unnecessary and probably should have been avoided.
テロリストの要求を飲む必要はもちろんないわけですけれども、しかし、そのことと交渉するパイプを持たないということは全く別のことだと思います。
Certainly, I do not think it is correct to ever give in to terrorist demands, but at the same time, I think that the idea of maintaining a pipeline of communications with the other side is a completely different matter.
たとえ無条件の解放を要求するとしてもですね、実際に人質2人を解放するために安全が確保されるのか、その間空爆を止めることができるのか、誰が受け取りに行くのか、どこで受け取りに行くのか、そういったことをですね、正しい相手と正しく話をするパイプがないことにはそもそも話になりません。
Of course, I'm not saying that we should give in to all of these demands without unconditionally. At the same time, however, one needs to work out details. One needs to have a counterpart with whom to negotiate and speak, and perhaps try to achieve a ceasefire in terms of the bombings of the Islamic State for a time until the hostages are released. Many details need to be worked out. Who will actually take over the hostages? Who, at which location will they be handed over? A correct pipeline of communications needs to be established, and the correct person to speak to must be ascertained.
今回の件でも、これまでの似たようなケースでも、多くの仲介者になるという偽物が現れて、それにアメリカが騙されるというようなケースはたくさん起きております。今回でもそういう恐れが当然あるわけです。
Of course, whenever this kind of a hostage situation occurs, there are many people who suddenly come to the forefront and claim that they do have the right to negotiate and that they are the correct party to be speaking to. However, many of these persons turned out to be fraudulent persons, and the United States has had bitter experience in the past with such people. As a result, it is only natural that the Japanese government this time feels quite cautious.
イスラム国の呼びかけは安倍政権だけではなく日本国民に対する呼びかけという形を取っておりました。それに対してですね、我々は答えるべきだというふうに考えています。もちろん日本は民主主義を取っている国ですので、安倍政権に賛成する人間もいれば反対する人間もいる、その中でですね、我々にどういう対応ができるのかということを問われているのだと思います。
As you may remember, the announcement of the hostage situation by the Islamic State was directed not only to the administration of Prime Minister Abe, but also to the citizens of Japan, the Japanese people as well. And I think it is something worth thinking about how the Japanese people should respond. As you know, the Japanese people, the Japanese country is a democratic nation. As a result, although the administration of Prime Minister Abe is the administration in power, there are people in the country who support him and those who do not. Given this background, how should we respond?
ここからは私個人の提案になります、提言になります。それはもちろんイスラム教徒、イスラム学者としての立場でもありますし、同時に日本国民としてですね、アメリカ、日本にも受け入れられるギリギリの線だということで一応提言させていただきます。
From this point on, I would like to offer my own personal opinion or my own personal proposal as to how we might resolve this current situation. I speak not only as with my background of my knowledge of Islam, but also based on my expertise in Islamic law, but also as a Japanese person as well. In other words, the proposal that I'm presenting is one I think that the Japanese people could, it is the proposal that the Japanese people could accept as the least most, even if it is very much, it is very difficult, they would be able to accept it. Excuse me.
安倍総理が言った通り、日本はイスラム国と戦うそういう同盟国の側に援助をするわけですけれども、それはあくまでも人道援助に限られるというこの論理はイスラム国に対しても同じように適用されるべきだというふうに思っております。
As Prime Minister Abe has said, the nations that have declared battle on ISIS are the allied countries of our nation. At the same time, however, the fundamental understanding is that the aid that we provide, the contributions that we provide, are only for humanitarian purposes. This is something that needs to be transmitted or conveyed to the Islamic State.
これまでも人道援助あるいは経済援助の名のもとにアフガニスタンあるいは直接関係するイラクに関しても日本や国際社会は多くの援助を行ってきましたけれども、それが適切な人のもとに届いていなかった。特にですねスンナ派のイスラム主義と言われる人たちに対しては非常に扱いが悪かったということがですね、そもそもそういった怨嗟が今回の事件の根源にございます。
The root of the current problem lies in the fact that in the past there has been there have been many contributions made to other countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, under the name of humanitarian contributions or economic contributions. Not only Japan, but the international community has given this kind of aid. However, the fact of the matter is that much of this aid has not gone to the people who truly deserve that kind of aid and who truly needed that kind of aid. And there was a feeling, especially among the Sunni Muslims, that they were not being treated correctly or fairly, and that I think goes to the root of the current problem.
現在のイスラム国の前身はイラクのスンナ派のイスラム運動です。そしてですので彼ら自身はアメリカによってイラクが攻撃されたことを彼ら自身の体験として覚えております。そしてその時に彼らも含めてですね、サッダム・フセイン政権が倒れたときには、ほとんどのイラク人はアメリカを歓迎していました。それが数ヶ月でですね、反アメリカに変わった。それはやはり空爆その他でたくさんの人が殺された。特に女子供たちが殺されて、それに対して全く保障がされていないという事態がございます。で現在それが繰り返されており、イスラム国が支配している行政の責任を持っている地域で多くの人々が殺されています。
In regard to the Islamic State, it originally had its roots in the Sunni Islamic movement in Iraq. And these people that are currently in the Islamic State, many of them have actually experienced directly the bombings by the United States. When the United States actually began some of their activities in Iraq, many Iraqis actually welcomed the Americans. However, this welcome feeling turned in a few months to bitterness, primarily because so many women and children and innocents were being killed by these air bombs, and there were no compensations given to any of these people at all. And the point I'm trying to make is that this happened in the past, and yet, from the point of view of the Islamic State, it is happening again now. In other words, in the territories that are controlled by the Islamic State, governed by the Islamic State, again, people are being killed.
国際赤十字、中東地域では、新月社というふうに言われていますけれども、イスラム国の支配下にあるところでも人道活動を続けているというふうに聞いております。で、私の制限といたしましては、イスラム国の要求している金額、これはもうあくまでも日本政府のですね、難民支援に対して、それと同額のものということですので、それを難民支援、人道支援に限るということで、赤新月社を通じ、そしてトルコに仲介役になってもらって、そういう条件を課した上で、日本はあくまでも、難民の支援を行う、あるいは、イラク、シリアでですね、犠牲になっている人たち、そういった家族の支援を行うという条件を課した上で行う、これが一番、合理的であって、どちらの側にも、受け入れられる、ギリギリの選択ではないかというふうに私は考えております。
As you know, the Red Cross has maintained its activities even in areas that are controlled by the Islamic State. Of course, they are referred to as the Red Crescent, I believe, in that area.
これで最後になります。はい。
And therefore, I believe my proposal is that the Japanese government do something quite similar. In other words, the monies that the Islamic State has requested or demanded from the Japanese government is basically equivalent to the money that the Japanese government has promised these other countries for humanitarian and refugee reasons. So I believe that a similar contribution could be made that would be directed to the Islamic State for similar reasons. In other words, it could be given through the Red Crescent organization through Turkey and given so that the monies could be used. It doesn't have to go to the Islamic State directly, but it could go to Turkey and the refugees or the people who have lost their families, the families of those who are severed can receive the kind of humanitarian aid that is so much necessary.
日本ではあまり大きく報道されていませんでしたけれども、1月17日に、イスラム国はヤジディですね、イラクのヤジディ教徒を350人を無償で、人道目的で解放しております。これも一つのメッセージであるというふうに考えるべきであると私は考えております。
Many of you may not be aware of this because it was not taken up very much in the Japanese media, but on January 17th, the Islamic State actually released 350 hostages. They were Yazidi adherents. That's a religion that is of the Kurdish people. And they released these people without any money. They released them for humanitarian reasons. I think that is a very strong message that was sent by this organization to the international community.
私が言います。これから、私の友人たち、イスラム国にいる私の友人たち、古い友人たちですけれども、に対して、私のメッセージを伝えたいと思います。まず日本語で、日本の政府に対して、イスラム国が考えていることを説明し、こちらから新たな提案を、行いたいと思います。しかし、72時間というのは、72時間はそれをするには時間が短すぎます。もう少し待っていただきたい。もし、交渉ができるようであれば、私自身、イスラム国に行く用意もございます。1月17日にヤゼディの350人の人質が人道目的で解放されたことは、私も、存じております。そのことは高く評価するべきだというふうに思っております。それで印象も良くなっているというふうに思います。日本人を釈放することが、イスラムおよびイスラム国のイメージを良くするし、私もそれを望んでいます。また、日本にいるすべてのムスリムもそのことを望んでいます。72時間という時間は、我々、とってあまりにも短すぎます。時間をもう少しいただきたいというふうに思っています。これを聞いていただければ、幸いです。ありがとうございます。
So I would like to send a message to my friends in the Middle East, and I would just say the comments very, very briefly, which is that I would like everyone to understand that I'm making a proposal to the Japanese government, and I'm trying to explain what the thinking behind your organization actually is. So please wait a little bit before doing anything. 72 hours is too short a time limit. Please wait just a little bit longer, and I am prepared to go to the location you designate at any time. And I've just explained about your releasing 350 hostages on January 17th, and that certainly improved the image of Islam and of the Islamic State. And I believe that if you release the Japanese hostages, your image would be greatly enhanced as well. This is something that not only I, but all Muslims very much long for. And I repeat again, 72 hours is too short a time. Please wait.
ではアラビア語で
And now I would like to say this in Arabic.
ビスミラヒルラフマーニルラヒームアルハムドリラワッサラトワッサラマラサイドナムハンマドワアリヒアラアリヒワアスビアジュマインファディラトシェフウマルグラバウワサイルエフワティアラアヒバウسوف أتحدث عن الحكومة اليابانية مقصود تربية الدولة الإسلامية وأوضح لها منطقيته وسوف أقدم لها اقتراح جديد ولكنه لا تكفي له 72 ساعة وأرجو منكم مهلة لا تنفذ فيها حكمكم على الأسيرين اليابانيين أنا مستعد لقدوم إلى الدولة الإسلامية لمفاوضة لهذه المهمة في أي وقت. قد سررت بسماع إطلاق سراح 350 شخصا من أسراكم اليزيديين يوم 17 وأدت مؤامرتكم هذه إلى تصحيح تصوركم في أذهان الأجانب الذين لم تكن لديهم معرفة كاملة عن حقيقة الدولة الإسلامية. أنا أتيقن أن إطلاق سراح الأسيرين اليابانيين بدلاً عن قضائهما يحسن انتباه العالم غير الإسلامي بالإسلام والدولة الإسلامية وهذا الذي أرغب فيه وجميع المسلمين في اليابان. وأدعو الله تعالى هداية لكم ولنا ومغفرة وتوفيقا. أخوكم في الله حسن كوناكاتا. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم.
Okay, thank you very much for this. I'd like to draw your attention that yesterday morning, the Foreign Correspondents Club also issued a statement. One of the two hostages is a journalist. He was captured, as far as we know, he was captured by doing what we are doing his job. And that's why I would like to quickly read this statement as the secretary of this club. The Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan expresses its dismay at the taking of 2 Japanese citizens as hostages by the group known as Islamic State and calls for their immediate and unconditional release. We note that one of the 2 reported hostages, Kenji Goto, is a journalist whose career has been dedicated to highlighting humanitarian themes such as the promotion of peace, aid for refugees, and an end to poverty. His very presence in that region is testament to the fact that he is a special kind of Japanese whose sincerity and bravery must be respected. Whatever grievances Islamic State may hold, any act of punishment against Mr. Goto would be a terrible injustice. Both Japanese citizens should be released unharmed. The Board of Directors, Foreign Correspondents Club of Japan. You find the statement on our website if you want to look it up. Then we go into question and answer. As Professor Nakata said at the beginning, he has a little hearing problem, so please ask your questions slowly and clearly. In English or in Japanese, we have Takamatsu-san for translation here. Please, as usual, state your name and affiliation before you ask your question, and one short question only, if possible. Okay?
フリーのジャーナリストで田中隆作と申します。今回の事件で、日本政府側から、中田さんに、何らかの接触はありましたでしょうか。つまり要請はありましたでしょうか。で、イスラム国側とのパイプはまだ健在でしょうか。
Translation for, excuse me.
日本政府からの、要請は直接にはございません。
So, I'm a freelancer. I would like to ask, have you actually been contacted by the Japanese government to try to become involved in this situation? Is your pipeline of communications with the Islamic State still sound?
日本政府から直接には私には要請はございません。しかし、コンタクトは、ないわけではございません。また、イスラム国とのパイプにつきましても、最初に申し上げましたとおり、私、これまでですね、できる限りコンタクトをしないようにしておりましたけれども、コンタクトが取れることは確認しております。
So, I have not been directly contacted by the Japanese government. Having said this, however, although not on an official basis, it is not that there is no contact at all from the government. In regard to your question about my pipeline with the Islamic State, as I mentioned earlier, because of the criminal case that was proceeding, I did refrain from making contact with my colleagues there. However, I am in the process of confirming whether this pipeline still is sound.
Maybe I'd like to follow up on that question. Generally, what's your assessment? How good are the connections of the Japanese government in the region, in the Middle East in general? Are they well presented? Are they well connected? Or do they have to start from more or less zero?
それに関連する質問でございますが、日本政府は、この地域、中東地域全体におきましてどのぐらいのそのコネクションというのコミュニケーション、のその手段というのをお持ちなんでございますでしょうか。かなりいろいろその話できる、話が通じる、あるいはそのコネクションというものが、なれるような人がいらっしゃるんでしょうか。それとも、正直言ってゼロから始めなきゃいけないという状態なんでしょうか。
もちろん、私自身がそれについて答えられる立場ではありませんけれども、一般論といたしまして私自身も2年間、サウジアラビアで、専門調査員という立場で、大使館で働いた経験もございますので、日本にはアラビストというですね、そういうシステムがございまして100人以上のアラブの専門家が働いております。その意味では、アラブのですね、に関する知識がないということはもちろん申せません。しかし、彼ら自身がですね、アラビストが、外務省の中で主流かというとそういうことはございませんし、特にイスラム関係ですね、イスラム主義あるいはイスラム学の、専門家に対するコネクションは非常に弱いということは残念ながら申し上げていいと思います。
Of course, I'm not in a position to actually comment on that because I'm not a member of the government. Having said this, however, in my career in the past, I myself have worked for 2 years in Saudi Arabia as a special researcher, and I was attached to the Japanese embassy there. In Japan, there are over 100 people who are considered Arabists. In other words, they have knowledge and expertise in Arabian matters. So I think when you talk about the Japanese government, you cannot say that they have no knowledge of the Arab world at all. At the same time, however, they are not in the mainstream of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I guess they're not part of the elite or core people in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And when we talk about expertise in Islamic affairs, Islamic law, especially matters regarding Islam, I think the knowledge is unfortunately rather weak in the Japanese government.
Joel, please.
My name is Joël Legendre. I'm from the French radio and television. You wrote many books about Islam. You gave a definition about Khalifa, I think 3 or 4 years ago. And I don't think this issue of hostage here is anything to see with Islam. And I would like to read you a very short comment made by a friend of mine, a Muslim. Islam has nothing to do with this. ISIS is nothing more than a bunch of mercenaries, brainwashed spy agents and losers who are just run by remote control. They represent no whatever human value. Could I have a comment on that?
はい、先生は、ごめんなさい、私はフランスの特派員でございます、ラジオ、テレビ特派員でございます。先生はたくさんそのイスラムについての本をお書きになっていらっしゃると思うのでございます。しかしながら今回のその、人質事件とイスラムは直接本当は関係はないというふうに私は思うのでございます。私のムスリム教徒であります友人がこのようなことを言っておりました。今回のそのイスラム国がやっていることというのは、あの組織を見ますと、彼らたちは傭兵ばっかりでございますし、またそれぞれの社会の敗者でありますし、遠隔操縦されているような人たちばっかりでございますので、人道的な人間的な価値が全くない、組織だと思いますと、彼は非常に強く非難したのでございますが、その私の友人のコメントについてはどう思われますでしょうか。
はい、最初に、おっしゃられたとおり、私はカリフ制というものを支持しております。これまでも平和裏にカリフ制というものが樹立されることを世界に訴えてまいりました。そして、当然その意味はカリフ制というのが本来イスラムが目指すべき体制、イスラムの合法体制ということですので、その不在の現在ですね、不在の現在においては、私自身を含めまして、イスラム教徒の行っていることはすべて、ある意味では間違っているということになります。当然、イスラム国もその一つであるというふうに私自身は考えております。
As you have mentioned, yes, I have written many books, and I've written about the caliphate system, which is something that I believe should eventually be achieved or realized through peaceful means. That is a thing that I believe in very strongly, and I have been making an appeal for this throughout the world. I believe this caliphate system is something that Islam eventually aspires to achieve. However, we do not have such a system in existence at present, and so what is being done under the name of Islam is mostly wrong, including the activities of the Islamic State. 私の友人のその言ってたこと、he thought he was, but その全く最終的にそのイスラム国は人間の価値もない、no human value, is that what you were asking, sir? 全くに本当に傭兵であって、それぞれその元の社会のその敗者が集まって、全くその人間の価値がないような組織であるというふうに私のムスリム教徒の友人が言ったんですが、そのコメントについて何か
その友人の方がどういう方か存じませんし、その人が言っている内容についてですね、どういう根拠に基づいて言っているのか私は存じませんので、それについてはコメントはできません。先ほども言いましたとおり、私の今までのイスラム国の訪問といいますのは、私の友人たちをもともと訪ねていっているものです。でそういった友人たちはそういう方ではありません。これはもう長年の経験から言えることであって、それはイスラム国に加入する前からですね、加入する前の彼らの本国での暮らしぶりも、普通の人というよりはむしろ、普通の人たちよりもずっと正直で教養も高くてですね、基本的には教養高い人たちですね、教養が高くて正直で、信頼できる人たちであったというのが個人的な私の感想で、知らない人間については私も何も言いようがございません。
I cannot comment on your friend's comments because I do not know the exact reasons of why he made such comments. I do not know this gentleman. I only know my friends and my colleagues, and these are friends and colleagues that I had personal relationships with even before they entered the Islamic State. My impressions of them are developed based on long years of acquaintanceship. I knew them before they entered the Islamic State, and I've seen how they lived their daily lives, and they were just regular people. In fact, I would go even further than that and say that they were better than regular people. They were, first of all, highly educated, highly cultured, very honest, extremely trustworthy. So these are the impressions that I have of these friends, and they have not changed. In regard to people in the organization, and in regard to your friend, people who I do not know directly, I cannot comment.
Okay, back there, please.
北海道新聞の西村と申します。先ほどのお話の中で日本の人道支援やるのであれば赤新月社とトルコを通じて行うべきだというお話がありました。これが実際に難民の方にですね、どのような形で届くようになるか、もう少し詳しくその方法というかどう届くかというのをご説明いただきたいのと、これはそうした場合にイスラム国によるテロを防止する役割を担うのかどうかについていかがでしょうか。
I'm from the Hokkaido newspaper. You mentioned earlier your proposal that the Japanese government offer humanitarian aid through the Red Crescent organization and through Turkey, the Turkish government. Can you be more specific as to exactly what kind of a program you envision? What methods or what concrete ideas do you have to ensure that the money will be used for humanitarian purposes and the money will be directed toward the refugees who need them? And do you also think that if such an act is implemented, then this will help prevent further terrorist activities by the Islamic State?
よろしいですか。難民といった場合、国外難民と国内難民がございます。で、今回の提言というのは、トルコおよび赤新月社を通じてですね、あくまでもイスラム国の支配地域についてという話ですので、その意味では国内難民の話になります。で、これはもうイスラム国からのレポートを読めば分かるとおり、イスラム国でのですね、生活は非常に苦しいものがございます。それは私自身も見てきたことですけれども、その場合の人道援助というのがどういう形になるのかというのは、それがテロを減らすことになるかどうかということはですね、しかしそれは考えないというのが人道援助の基本ですので、それについてはですね、直接の効果は必ずしも期待できないかもしれません。しかし先ほどから申しましたとおり、もともとですね、こういうイスラム国の前進が出現したこと自体が、イラクおよびシリアの、特にイラクですけれども、イラクのですね、難民といいますか、それでアメリカの空爆によって難民化した人たちに対する、保障がなかったことに対する恨みという意味でですね、間接的には、減らすことになるということも言えるとは思います。
When we talk about refugees or people who have suffered as a result of fighting, we can talk about people who are refugees both within a nation and without the nation, outside of the nation. And since I'm talking about this kind of humanitarian aid being directed through the New Crescent organization and through Turkey, I basically think that this humanitarian aid should be directed to the refugees who are living in the areas that are controlled or dominated by the Islamic State. So the definition would be internal or domestic refugees. And I think I've read the reports from members of the Islamic State as to how difficult the daily lives of the people in these areas are. And I have actually visited these regions and seen how difficult and how much suffering the average people are experiencing. In regard to your question, do I think this kind of humanitarian aid will directly, therefore, prevent further terrorist activities? I do not know if this will exactly directly achieve that result. But when one is offering humanitarian aid, that you do not think about such things. You offer aid because people need it. Having said this, however, as I mentioned earlier, the reason that the Islamic State was born to begin with was because people in Syria and primarily people in Iraq, after they lost family members and homes and experienced great suffering as a result of the U.S. Bombings, there was no compensation, there was no support given to them, and that turned into bitterness against the United States. So this is the fundamental background to the establishment of the Islamic State, and therefore I believe that offering this kind of humanitarian aid to the refugees this time will indirectly probably lead to less terrible activities.
具体的には、食料、医薬品、および、シリアも非常に冬は厳しいですので、暖房器具、毛布、そういったものと、物資ですね、人道支援以外には使えない物資を配るというのが一番具体的な方法としては思い浮かぶことです。
And in regard to specific measures, I believe what should be given in terms of humanitarian aid is actual things such as foods, medicines. Also, Syria, the areas in Syria are sometimes very, very cold in the wintertime. So blankets, heating equipment, in other words, commodities, goods that cannot be used for anything but humanitarian use. Those are the things that I think should be provided.
Okay, here, the lady, please. Yes, no, the other one. Sorry, she's first. Just for your information, we're not going to stop at 11. We can continue longer, so I'll try to take in as many questions as possible.
はい、11時に終わるということになっておりましたんですけど、少し延期できますので、ご安心いただければと思います。
はい、AFP 通信社の長谷川と申します。はい、これから中田さんは日本政府に対して、ご提案をするというふうに声明でおっしゃられていましたけれども、これ以降の、政府に対してどういうアプローチを取るのかというご予定を教えていただければと思います。
So I'm from AFP Wire Services. I'd like to ask Professor Nakata. You've made this declaration that you have made this proposal to the Japanese government. Can I ask what you intend to do next? What exactly, what kind of concrete steps are you planning to do in the future in regard to the Japanese government?
どうしましょうかね。被疑者のリスクというような話は。私自身今、必ずしも自由な目ではありませんので、とりあえずここでですね、話したことをそれを、全世界に伝えてほしいと思います。それはもちろん日本政府の、にも、届くはずですので。
I myself am not free to move or act as as I wish at present, and therefore I believe that one major thing is that I am taking part in this press conference today. I would hope that you would convey my message to the people throughout the world, and including also the Japanese government.
Okay, then the lady opposite, excuse me.
フリーの竹内と申します。先ほどの AFP の方とも関連するかと思いますが、今日までの報道を見る限り、日本政府はこの件に関して交渉のパイプ役はいないというふうに報じられております。今回先生がパイプ役になれるということをここで表明されたわけですので、これにもしですね、先生のこのアピールに政府が反応しなかったとすれば、政府はこの人質をですね、救出する気があるとお思いですか。この間2ヶ月もですね、後藤さんのことを放っておかれたわけですけれども、その経緯についても含めていかがでしょうか。
I'm a freelancer. My question is probably following on the previous question. Until now, we would look at the reports that are coming into the media, and we see that the Japanese government does not seem to have a negotiating pipeline, a way of creating dialogue with the Islamic State. You, however, in your presentation today are saying that you do have the ability to potentially be a pipeline, a negotiation method for the Japanese government. If the Japanese government, as a result, even after your press conference today, does not take up your offer, does not respond, do you think that the Japanese government, will you assume that the Japanese government really is serious about trying to retrieve the hostages? The reason I ask this is that Mr. Goto has been a hostage for 2 months already, and the Japanese government has done nothing.
9月に私がイスラム国を訪問するときにですね、事前に外務省に間接的にですけれどもお知らせしまして、そして協力することがあれば協力したいという話をしましたけれども、その時ですね、外務省の方から、トルコの空港でこれは自己責任であって、行かないことをお勧めする、行く場合も、ご自由にということで、協力は得られないということでした。それで、もちろん私自身がですね、協力しなくても、解放できるのであればそれで結構なことですので、ということでしたけれども、現在までの展開を見るとですね、極めて、怪しいのではないかというふうに残念ながら私は思っております。
In September, when I was contacted by my associate and decided to visit the Islamic State to try to rescue Mr. Yukawa, before that, I visited the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or I indirectly contacted the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and basically told them that if there was anything I could do to help cooperate, I would like to do so. However, the response from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was that if you go, we do not recommend that you go to this area of the world. It is very, very dangerous, and if you do go, it is on your own recognizance. It's on it's your own self-responsibility if you do that, but you're free to go if you wish. So if the Japanese government is able to work out the hostage situation and retrieve the hostages on their own, that would be a wonderful thing, but I am full of quite anxiety.
Okay, there's a number of journalists at the far table, and the gentleman, yes, just before, yes, please.
読売新聞の武田と申します。質問2点あるんですが、1点目がですね、中田先生がイスラム国のどのような立場の人と実際にコネクションをお持ちで、そこを通じて交渉した場合に、どの程度2人が解放される確率があるのかという点です。でもう1点が、この72時間を過ぎてしまった場合、2人の生命にどの程度の危険があるというふうに今お考えか、その2点を教えてください。
From the Yomiuri newspaper, I have two questions. First of all, you've been talking about this colleague that you have in the Islamic State. Can you tell us in what his status in the organization is, and if you were to negotiate with him or through him, what is the possibility? How high is the possibility that the hostages would be released? Second question is that if the 72 hours pass and things remain as they are, how much actual physical danger will these two hostages be in, do you believe?
はい、まず第一の点ですけれども、ウマル・グラバー氏というのはですね、最初に秋田先生からも説明がありましたけれども、イスラム国の中で唯一、表に出ている人です。という意味は、まずフェイスブックとかですね、ツイッター上で公式アカウントを持っておりまして、最近つぶやきを減ってはいますけれども、今でも、発言を続けております。でそれでですね、本人自身が特定できる顔も、上がっておりますし、今まで日本でもですね、常岡さんおよび横田さんというですね、そういう日本人のジャーナリストともインタビューをしております。でその2回とも、私自身その場に立ち会っておりまして、実際にですねイスラム国の中で、どこまで指導的な地位にいるのかということは私も、はっきりとは申し上げられませんけれども、少なくともですねイスラム国の行政機関の中で働いている。で司令官というですね名前で呼ばれる、今は彼は広報というか宣教担当の、地位にいますけれども、そういう立場にいる人間であって、これは先ほどから何度も申し上げています通り、顔も出しております。という意味で特定できる人ですね、表に出られる人、皆さんでもですねウマラ・グラバーでですね見ていただければ見ることができる人です。そういう意味で騙されるっていうかですね、偽物であってということはありえません。しかし彼自身がですね公式にイスラム国の代表としてスポークスマンとして話せるわけではありませんので、あくまでも私はそれをつなぐことができるというだけの話です。第2点ですけれども、72時間という非常に短い時間で、このことが何を意味するのか私もまだつかみかねております。しかし実際にですね72時間でお金が払い込まれるっていうのはどうやって払い込まれるかという交渉するともありますので、72時間以内にですねお金が払わなければという話ではないと思います。まず交渉の糸口をつかめるかどうか、それが72時間の対応にかかっているんだというふうに思っています。その意味でですね、まずともかく交渉の糸口をつかむということに全力を挙げたいというふうに私は今考えております。
すみません、グラバーさんは今広報とおっしゃってました。
広
報というか宣教なんですよ。宣教師で。
彼はですね公式のスポークスマンではありません。イスラム国の中でですねイスラムの宣伝をする人です。
わかりました。In regard to your first question, my associate, my colleague, my acquaintance from many years ago is a man named Mr. Umar Grabar, and he is unusual in the Islamic State in that he is the only person of the Islamic State who has made his presence public. For example, he has an official Twitter account. His tweets have become less frequent in recent months, but he still maintains that Twitter account. He also has a Facebook page as well. And he has already given 2 interviews with Japanese journalists such as Mr. Tsuneoka and Mr. Yokota. And for both of these interviews, I also participated. And the interviews were granted in the territory of the Islamic Islamic State. Of course, I do not know the organization so well, so I do not know. I know that he is not necessarily the official spokesperson for the organization. He is not the representative. However, I do believe he plays an important role in the administration of the organization, and his official title used to be Shireikan, which would be translated as commander. Now, however, he seems to be in Koho, which is public relations, but he is basically more of a minister. In other words, he is a cleric. But because his face is well known, you can look it up and find his accounts. He is a person that is very much in the organization, so he's not a fraud. He is not someone that would deceive. Again, whether or not he is actually the person to be eventually negotiating with, he would at least be the person to start being able to begin negotiations with. In regard to your second question, 72 hours does feel like a very, very short deadline, and I do not fully understand the reason why such a short deadline was originally set. And certainly I believe that when you consider the actual paperwork that is involved in transmitting or sending monies, I do not think that the Islamic State necessarily expected that the monies to be paid in full by the end of the 72-hour deadline. However, I believe that the 72-hour deadline was a test to see if some kind of possible negotiating could be started during that time.
It's the gentleman in front of Saikawa-san, please.
Excuse me, the interpreter said a few moments ago, public relations. It is not public relations. It is, again, his clerical activities. He is a cleric in the Islamic organization. He preaches.
すみません、読売新聞国際部の水野と言いますけれども、すみません、一点冒頭確認なんですけれども、資料の方にですね、湯川さんの救出の経験などのところに2013年とあるんですけど、これ一昨年の話でよろしかったですか？資料の方には2013年8月26日にというようなところで去年
すいません、ちょっと期間間違えてました。じゃあそれははい一昨年あれ去年だよね。去年ですよね。はい、去年です。2014年です。ごめんなさい。
わかりました。司令官のウマルグラバー氏と交流あったというのは2013年でよろしかったですか？
ウマルさんは2013年です。
わかりました。すみません、質問なんですけれども、目下72時間ということで、2億ドルの身代金をどうするかというのが、政府の中でも一応話がありますけれども、身代金を支払うかどうかというところについてはですね、どのようにお考えでいらっしゃって、その理由もちょっと教えていただければなというふうに思うんですけれども。
So first of all, I just wanted some confirmation about some of the dates that were in the document. The rescue attempt of Mr. Yukawa occurred in 2014, not 2013, as stated in the documents. But your conversations and contact with Mr. Gruber that you described were actually in 2013, so there was just a little bit of confusion about the dates. The question is that 72 hours, $200 million, the Japanese government is probably deliberating this very, very difficult issue. In regard to whether or not they should pay, what are your thoughts and what are your reasonings behind such thoughts?
先ほど申し上げましたとおり、身代金を払うということではなく、トルコを仲介に、敵審議者を通じて、イスラム国に、イスラム国ですね、イスラム国の支配下にある地域の、難民、国内難民について、あるいはその戦争被害者に対してですね、人道援助を行うということでですね、彼らにその信頼して任せるというですね、結局その分配に関しては彼らを信頼するしかないわけですし、そしてまた現在ですね、イスラム国あるいはイスラム国の前身だったところのヌスラ戦線というものがとりあえずここまで支持を広げたことの理由は、大きな理由はですね、他の 軍閥あるいは民兵集団と違って、彼らがですね、その援助金あるいは援助物資を公正に人々に分配した、そのことによって、特にヌスラ戦線ですねは、他の自由シリア軍たちに比べてですね、支持を得たという実績がございます。それを信じてですね、彼らに任せるということであって、テロリストの要求に屈して身代金を払ったということではなくてですね、あくまでも彼らの要求も日本政府はアメリカの同盟国を通じてですね、人道援助を行ったので、我々を通じて同じような人道援助をしてほしいということだというふうに理解するというふうに私は考えております。
In regard to your question about paying ransom money, as I mentioned earlier, I do not believe that it is proper to pay ransom money. But what I do believe is a possible solution to this issue is that through the Red Crescent organization, through the government of Turkey, to issue to provide humanitarian aid, as Mr. Abe has promised to other nations in the Middle East, to provide the similar kind of humanitarian aid to people living in the areas controlled by the Islamic State. In other words, people who are refugees, people who are victims of the war. This is a very major step, I believe, to earn the trust of the people in this area. In part because, as I mentioned earlier several times, the reason that the Islamic State has gained so much support over the years is that unlike other groups that appeared during that time, they were well recognized as being a group that would take any kind of aid or support or goods that were available and distribute that fairly to the populace. And I believe that a similar fair and equal distribution of such goods can be expected. In other words, I do not believe this ransom money should be paid to terrorists, but just as the Japanese government has offered humanitarian aid through a U.S. ally, I think a similar way of providing humanitarian aid to the other side could resolve this issue.
Okay, Teddy has a question.
Thank you. テリー・ジンボブでビデオニュース。中田先生にじゃあ日本語で質問いたします。今回ビデオの中でですね、イスラム国側の人間が日本はその十字軍に参加したという表現を使っています。で一方で日本政府は今回の2億ドルというのはあくまで人道援助で、そこにどうも誤解があるようだというような発言もしていると。でそこでお伺いしたいんですけども、先生に日本はですね、イスラム国の認識ではいつからその十字軍と彼らが呼ぶものの一部になったのか、あるいは今回その人道援助と言っているけれども、果たしてそれは誤解なのか、どうなのかっていうことも含めてですね、ちょっとそこのところを正していただければと思います。
So I'm from Video News. In the video that was released with the hostages, the representative of the Islamic State talked about the Japanese government as having joined the Crusades. In other words, they believe that in spite of the fact that the Japanese government has said this was only humanitarian aid, the Islamic State appears to believe that the Japanese government has joined the other allies countries in fighting against the Islamic State. The Japanese government has responded by saying our aid is only humanitarian and there is a misunderstanding about our intentions. So my question to Professor Nakata is this. First of all, at what point in time did the Islamic State begin to consider Japan as being part of the Crusades? And in regard to the Japanese government's emphasis on there being an understanding about this humanitarian aid, what is your response, impression?
まず十字軍の一部になったかどうかについてですね、これについてはもちろんイスラム世界の中でも認識は異なっていると思います。特にですね、イラクに関しては日本が自衛隊を派遣しております。それはイラクですので当然彼らは知っているわけですね。その意味では今特に新しいことが起きているという認識ではないというふうに思っております。ただこれ一般的にですね、中東ではいまだにですね、日本というのはアメリカとは違うというですね、その認識は確かにございますし、今回の件に関してもですね、アメリカに対するですね、メッセージと今までのですね、人質の首を切られる時もですね、アメリカに対しては攻撃をやめろというですね、そういうメッセージだったわけですけれども、日本に対しては明らかに違うですね、日本の役割はあくまでもお金を出すことであると、これはやはり直接攻撃するものとは別だという扱いは今でも維持されております。 ただし、先ほどのですね、質問者の方からも、そのイスラム国に対してですね、そこでその支配地域で人道援助を行うことが、テロリズムに対するですね、支援にならないかというような質問が出ました。これは彼らから見ても同じことです。当然、アメリカ軍に対してですね、人道援助で、という形で支援しててもですね、やはり支援していることで変わらない。しかも、先ほどから何度も申し上げているとおり、イスラム国だけを名指しして、それと戦うためにという言い方をしておりますので、これはやはり、彼らから見る、特に彼らからですね、イスラム国から見るとですね、我々と戦っている十字軍だという認識になってしまうのは仕方ないことではないかというふうに考えます。
In regard to whether or not Japan is considered to be one of the countries participating in the crusade, I think opinions differ in the Islamic world. For example, the self-defense forces are active, have already been deployed into Iraq. People are aware of this, and it's not something new. I mean, suddenly military forces have not been sent from Japan. At the same time, however, I think the general understanding of people in the Middle East is that they do not know so much about Japan, and they tend to think that Japan does move pretty much in concert with the United States. For example, when hostages are killed or beheaded, and different government leaders issue condemnations. The Japanese government, if it's an American hostage, it tends to issue a condemnation. So while there's an understanding that while the Japanese government does not directly participate as a crusading country, the general feeling is that they are on the crusading country's side. A question was raised earlier. If we were to provide humanitarian aid to the Islamic State, is there wouldn't that be kind of perhaps supporting terrorist activities or allowing terrorist activities to occur? I mean, there's a question that was, the question was implied. But I think from the Islamic State's point of view, a similar point could be made. In other words, although the Japanese government, Prime Minister Abe says this is humanitarian aid, there is a feeling that because humanitarian aid is offered, then that the monies that might have been used for that kind of work can be used for military activities against ISIS. And the fact that, again, and I've said this repeatedly, the fact that the Prime Minister pointed out the Islamic State by name gives the impression to the Islamic State members that they are being targeted directly. That there's a fight directly against them.
Okay, moving back to this table here.
産経新聞の荒船です。今回脅迫の映像ではジハリジョンとされる今までは英国人の人質に対して英国人の人が脅迫するというのが多かったですけど、今回はなぜか同じような国籍の人ではなかったというふうに認識しています。でこれはつまり、日本人のようなイスラム国の日本人を調達できなかったということなのではないかと考えるんですけど、もし北大生のですね渡航が実現していれば、そのジハリジョンとされる立場の人が北大生になったって可能性もないとはいない、あるいは十分にあり得るんじゃないかと思うんですけど、その場合さらに今回としては状況が悪化した可能性があるんじゃないかと思うんですけど、その点中田先生はどういうふうに認識されてますか。
So from the Sankei newspaper, as we may recall, when the video was shown, the Islamic State member was a man that is quite often referred to as Jihadi John. He's obviously of UK, has a UK background. The fact that when the hostages were from the UK, Jihadi John was used, this seemed to be a kind of pattern. However, this time, although the hostages were Japanese, there was not a Japanese Islamic State representative making the statement in front of the camera. One of the reasons might be that the Islamic State has not been successful in recruiting Japanese people to their cause, which brings me to the fact that there was this incident last year where a student from Hokkaido Hokkaido University was trying to go and perhaps join the Islamic State. And if he had been successful, it could have been himself being Jihadi John, the Japanese version, in this hostage situation tape, in which case the situation, I believe, would have been even worse than it is today. What are your thoughts about this?
今回は北大生の件については特にコメントはしないということでここにおります。あと非常に過程がいくつも進んでおりますので、この過程の質問に答えてくださいというのもちょっと難しいと思います。
So, as I mentioned at the beginning, unfortunately, I have come here today, to talk about the hostage situation and not about the Hokkaido University student. And also, your question, unfortunately, is filled with many, many hypothetical points, and it is very, very difficult, therefore, to respond to such hypothetical questions.
Okay, take one last question. The front row, please.
AP 通信の山口と申します。よろしくお願いします。日本政府は今回の人質事件に関連して人命第一というふうに言っておりまして、もちろんその手段として先ほど中田先生がご提案なさった方向で進むのはとてもそうあればと願うわけですが。人命を救出するということだけを考えた場合、他に何か手段が可能性としてあるのかどうか、そして今後最悪の事態を含めてどのような事態が予想されるかということを教えていただければと思います。
So I'm from AP Wire Services. Right now, the Japanese government has taken the position that human lives are the most important consideration. And certainly in regard to the proposal that you've made, if things could move in that kind of positive direction, that would be a very, very good thing. However, if the Japanese government, again, clings to this idea of putting human lives first, are there any other possible ways that these hostages might be rescued? And separately from this, in future, what other very threatening or difficult situations might one foresee in the future?
Okay, I think we're slowly going to end here. We're 20 minutes over time.
He hasn't answered the question, but that's okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was please, sure. Sorry, I was distracted here.
私自身は先ほどの方法が唯一の方法だというふうに考えております。最悪の事態というのは空爆によってですね、それはアメリカ軍であるあるいはシリア軍であるかもしれませんけれども、空爆によってですね殺されてしまうというのがですね一番最悪の事態だというふうに考えております。
I myself believe that the proposal that I made is the only way to resolve this current situation. And when I think about negative turns that this situation might take in the future, I think the worst possible thing that could happen would be that air strikes might accidentally hit the hostages, whether they're U.S. airstrikes or Syrian airstrikes. If the hostages were killed as a result of such airstrikes, that would be a very, very sad situation.
So, yeah, well, one last one, okay, but very short, please, okay?
日本テレビの山見と申します。よろしくお願いします。今の質問ちょっと1個だけ確認なんですけれども、今処刑ビデオというか殺害予告ビデオが流されています。これまでそのビデオに登場してしまった人質の方々はほとんどのケースが、殺害されてしまっています。今先生は、最悪のケースは空爆によって、死ぬことだというようにおっしゃいましたけれども、このビデオの後、彼らの求めるような、回答が得られなかった場合に2人の方々、人質の方々は処刑されてしまうことになるのではないかと思うんですが、それについてはいかがお考えですか。
I just wanted to confirm what you just said. You said that the worst possible situation that you could imagine going forward in the future is that these hostages might be killed accidentally as a result of airstrikes. However, according to the video that was released, the hostages are being threatened with death, and it's very, very possible that if ISIS does not receive the answer that they wish, that these two persons might be killed or executed. What do you think about this possibility and about your previous comment?
はい。まず私が最悪の場合と言ったのはですね、空爆で殺されるという可能性は今現在でもあるわけです。72時間後であるということすらないですね。今現在、多くの、シリアのイスラム国にいる人たちですね、女子供そういった民間人も含めてですねが殺されています。それと一緒に殺されてしまうというのが私は最悪だというふうに考えております。もちろん、70時間が過ぎてですね、反応がなくて日本政府からの反応がなくて、殺されている可能性ももちろんございます。
I wanted to clarify when I said that the worst possible thing that could happen is that even while the negotiations are not even taking place, even within the 72-hour limit, if because there are so many people, women and children that are being killed on a daily basis by these airstrikes, it would be a terrible situation if these hostages were killed even within the 72-hour time limit. And of course, if after the 72 hours pass and there is no response from the Japanese government as the Islamic State wishes, of course the situation would be quite dire.
Okay, well, so now it's my turn. Great thanks to Takamatsu-san, who doesn't only translate, but he also makes sure that the moderator does his job properly. We're half an hour over time, so I would like to thank Professor Nakata for coming here today. He asked to be able to leave after this, so please remain seated when he's leaving the room. But I would also like to tell you, if you have more questions about the topic, at 3 o'clock this afternoon, we have Kosuke Tsunioka, a journalist and IS expert, so 3 o'clock again here. And my last thing which I'm doing is I'm handing over a 1-year honorary membership to Professor Nakata, as we do for all our speakers. Please give him a hand for coming today.